Hello and welcome to this edition of FOF Live. You heard that, Kevin? FOF Live. Presented by La Pop. That's LAPOP. Again, you can always check that out on Instagram, Twitter, and their Doral location. As you can see behind me, it is someone's day. I'm not going to spoil it, but he is right behind me. But before we get into that, we're going to go ahead and talk about this series with the Rangers. But first, let me introduce everybody here today. We have Kevin Barral, Eli Sussman, intern Nick Tarak, and we're going to have a special guest joining us from the press box. No, not Noah. It's going to be Grant Kiefer coming in from Great American Ballpark, as he will have your coverage of every single game between the Miami Marlins and the Cincinnati Reds. So everyone, let's go ahead and talk about this Rangers series, because I guess the home run derby was extended by a couple games, and this one for sure was definitely that one for the Fish. The Rangers, I believe, had 10 home runs that game, and almost seemed like each game had multiple home runs of at least 3 or 4. Kevin, talk to me about this series, and even just looking at, if you look at the highlights of each player from every game, it's all Rangers. Every single one is a Ranger, just showing how effective that team was.
Yeah, you're right. They went 9 for 9 in terms of the headshot recognition.
That may be the first time, yeah.
It's just incredible. That just shows you the difference between a World Series contender and a team fighting just for the third wild card spot, and maybe even if that. But again, Kevin, talk to us. Let's go this series overall, because if we go game by game, it's going to get more depressing by each one. So give us
I think it's worth going game by game very quickly here. Obviously, that first game, Miami got off to a good start. As you see, they scored 2, but Texas kind of, they came back and just dominated Miami. I mean, there's just no other way to put it. It kind of felt like Miami, to a certain degree, they were able to put up with this team. But, man, Adolis Garcia ended up with, I believe, 3 home runs in the whole series. Corey Seager with 2, and it was just a tough series overall. Miami's, Sandy got rocked despite having 7 strikeouts. Josh Young was out, got his home run. Seager got the home run. Just, man, Texas was just hitting for power. I think you mentioned to Danny before this series that it wouldn't surprise you if Texas hits around 8 to 10 home runs, and I believe they ended up with 10. So, this is a power hitting team from top to bottom, and Andrew Heaney put up a really nice start as well. Funny enough, he's one of their weaker pitchers in the rotation, him and John Gray, and Miami just wasn't able to take advantage of that. Miami did have a 5-0 lead at one point in game 2, and I believe it was between Ryan Weathers and another pitcher that they gave up that lead. They blew it, and they ended up losing 9-8. Jake Berger had his first home run. Josh Bell continued to play well. It was just a series where it kind of felt like the Baltimore one to a certain degree, where in games 1 and 2 is decently competitive. But that game 3 was just a total blowout for Miami. I mean, they couldn't even score a run. So, it just shows you, that it's just tough. It shows you, I think what you said, Danny. It shows you one of the difference between the top team in the AL West and Miami, who is middling for a playoff spot right now for that second or third wild card. So, tough series overall. They have a chance to bounce back big time, and what probably will be. I said a make or break series for Miami here. This could definitely define kind of the direction this team takes with the 3-game set, but we'll get into that later.
We have Ryan. We have Sean Millerick commenting here. I think he was at Saturday's game. He was at least one of the games in this series. So for him, just wanted to see one win. And Saturday was the one where they had the 5-run lead. I think only one other time all year where they've had a 5-run lead and have not won that game. Fell apart a little bit with George Soriano. That was the storyline from this series. Soriano getting his first career start after pitching so well. And he was pitching pretty well for the first 3 innings of this one before things got out of hand with the home run ball. And of all people, it was Robbie Grossman, probably the least likely of the home run hitters in this Rangers team. Just shows you how deep that lineup is with somebody like Soriano, and with Ryan Weathers coming in later that game and ultimately taking the loss. It shows that this is what happens when you don't go out and get a veteran starting pitcher at the deadline the way that we thought they would with this Marlins team. You have to patch it together with guys that are either inexperienced or simply not productive enough in that type of starting role. So without doing that, it was only maybe a game or two before now Yuri comes back into the mix. But every game counts in this situation. It is such a crowded wild card race here that every game counts. And that game in particular on Saturday, you'll have to look back on it and think, is that going to be the game that stands in the way of them making the postseason, just because they didn't have a real 5th starting pitcher available to them in that spot, going up against arguably the best lineup in baseball at this moment in time. Yeah, really tough series. I think a lot of us anticipated a series loss, but I was surprised that they were swept in this one, considering they had a decent the way that it lined up with Luzardo and Sandy going 2 of those days. I thought one of those guys would have a solid outing, and they didn't. So, yeah, I'll just finish off with Sandy, him being the guy looking incredible each of his previous 2 outings in a way that lended some hope that he was finally turning the corner. And then you have an outing like this where he threw a lot of strikes. He got a decent amount of swing and miss, but he also allowed 3 home runs in the process. That is very un-Sandy-like. We're now more than 4 months into the season. I think people need to come to grips that he is simply not going to be the guy that he was last year. There is no fully turning back into that mode. You're going to see flashes of it. There are going to be certain matchups where he performs well, but otherwise that is one big piece of the team that has simply not been as good as they anticipated. And it's one of the reasons why, as a whole, this pitching staff has underperformed this year. It's crazy to think about the team as a whole being better than we thought, but meanwhile, the rotation simply has not quite lived up to what it was supposed to be, and not as much the strength of this team as we were expecting entering the year.
Yeah, Nick, I wanted to ask you, from the deadline, do you believe the Marlins regret not buying on a starting pitcher? They were torched by Lorenzen just a few days after that, like in the Phillies at home. Do you think the team regrets not going after a starting pitcher?
I think 100% they do, especially now with sending down Cabrera, with him not doing good really as of late. He just can't find the zone, so they really need a 5th starter. With not getting one, it is going to have to be, like Elon was saying, that kind of mismatch of who do we kind of put in. Obviously, Yuri comes in, is a big help, but obviously it's just the rest of that time, it's a mismatch of who you put in. They're going to be missing a starter, which is really not good at this point in the year down the line, and it's almost not because of injury as much. Obviously, Trevor Rogers has been forever out, but Edward Cabrera not doing good is obviously killing him. So, I mean, maybe there's a chance he kills it in the minors and come back up, but that's questionable. But I think they do regret not getting a starter, and I think they could have got a starter for a relatively not super expensive cost. And if they're going to buy in, might as well buy in totally, not just leave those starters to just sitting there.
Yeah, we can always get into that and what they could have gotten, who they could have gotten, but again, that's in the past, and this team, you have to go forward on what you have and try to make the best of what you can do. Again, maybe not final topics, but final sayings here on the Ranger series. Were there anything positive that you guys think came from this series from the Marlins, if at all? It could be one thing. Was there anything at all that made you see like, oh, okay, that's something good that happened, or this player looked good?
I'll say Nick, Jake Berger hit his first Marlins home run, and Nick Fortes hit his first home run. I have to double check. I think it was his first home run in about 2 months that Fortes has done it. It's the same situation, though, with him and a lot of other players where you're just this deep into the year. I'm not going to say that's a sign of any change with him. Fortes has been really underwhelming offensively this year, and it is indeed his first home run since June 12th. And only his fifth one is his 5th one this year. But a lot of those came early on, with him. So yeah, that was a nice moment, I guess. But again, they lost a 1-run game here. From if you zoom out, since like the last couple months, they are basically a split when it comes to those 1-run games. That magic that they had early in the year, it hasn't fully regressed. They're still doing fine in those situations. It's another example, though, of not those little things, tiny things that have been going their way, not going their way as frequently. As a whole, it is the second lowest winning percentage of any team since the All-Star break. So it's an extended stretch here. It's been especially bad on the road. And so that's unfortunate because now they still have another road series coming up right now.
Yeah, I guess I guess another positive would be obviously Josh Bell, who continued to have a good series for the most part. I believe he had the RBI in game 1, and I believe he still has an OPS over 1,000 being a Marlin. Made some nice defensive plays, looked pretty good at first. And I guess if you look at the standings, 0.5 games, half a game away from the wild card. So that's another good one there.
Yeah, and how much of the Marlins helped that looking at every other team, it seems like everyone else is on a losing streak or they're past 10, have not gone well. You look at Cincinnati lost 6. Arizona have lost 6. All these teams are losing and giving Marlins hope. Again, the Cubs are on their winning ways, and they might pull through with that. But how much do you think the other teams or the Marlins are in a good spot now? Because seems like every other team since the deadline in the National League wildcard race is just not playing up to where they thought they were going to be.
Yeah, it's huge. I mean, you said it. Somehow Arizona, who found themselves with the first wild card not too long ago, now out of it completely. And then you have Cincinnati, who's not been good since the deadline. San Diego kind of resurging there a little bit. But it helps Miami that all these teams are bad. And San Francisco's lost 2 in a row if you look at it over there. So you never know. Maybe that second wild card spot isn't too far out of reach. So obviously the goal is just to get in somehow. But yeah, Miami's in a good position right now where if you take 2 out of 3 or even sweep, that's huge. Especially, I believe they would get the tiebreaker there with Cincinnati as well, since they lost. If you have to sweep to get the tiebreaker against Cincinnati, I think it was Eli who mentioned it, that they have the one with Chicago and Arizona.
Yes, they won the season series against both of those teams, so that will be pretty important,
especially with Chicago.
Yeah. So we go off that series and then talk about the incoming player for the Marlins starting this season. It might be the savior of the season, the guy who turns this ship around, who gets this team to the playoffs. Right behind me, Mr. Yuri Perez. Right here, not me. I mean, I'm a little bit.
You wish you were Yuri.
That's from his debut, also. Perfect. Look at that. Perfect. Kevin, you're a minor league guy. Talk to us about Yuri from the point he was optioned or called down to the point where he's now called up. Tell me about the in between what Yuri Perez did with the Marlins in the minor.
Well, thankfully, it's a little bit clearer now what we know, thanks to Craig, who was on our Spaces yesterday for State of the Fish. So Yuri was optioned, and he stayed in Miami for a week, and he was training at Pinecrest, a facility of a former Marlins, I believe, trainer it was, scout. And he then was optioned to Pensacola. He didn't pitch until July 26th. He was optioned July 7th, didn't pitch a actual game until July 26th, where he went 2 1/3. And then he didn't pitch again until August 1st, where he went 2 1/3, and 3 1/3. I'm sorry. And that's really all his action. Aside from that, you would assume he's been throwing bullpens in between during those times. His return is much needed. We expected him back for the Yankees series. That was what the Herald had mentioned. He is now coming back start earlier is what the case is here. Craig said it. I shouldn't say a panic move, but I respectfully disagree. This is a panic move for the Marlins. You needed a starting pitcher. You can't go out there going with a bullpen game every 5th day. You can't have Stephen Oker open games for you like they did early on in the year in that Chicago series specifically. It's a huge bring. It's huge to get Yuri back here, even though it's on the restrictions. If he could still give you 5-6 innings of shutout baseball and dominate, I mean, man, you're in such a good position to just moving on in the game. And I think, this is a great series to start that off in with the Yuri, and not only Yuri, just the offense kind of getting it going here. Also, Cincinnati, hitter-friendly ballpark, huge for them. I believe this is huge. This is huge for Yuri. He's facing a different lineup. Keep in mind what he saw last time when he faced the Reds isn't the same as this time around. Now you have Ellie De La Cruz, Christian Encarnacion Strand. You have some names there and other names that are a lot better. So this should be an interesting start for Yuri. I think the big thing for him, and we'll talk about it later, is I am interested to see how much he will incorporate the changeup, a pitch which he relied on pretty decently throughout his minor league career, barely used it at the major leagues, and now I'm not sure how much to use it at the minor league level again in those 2 starts, but I'm interested to see what kind of pitch mix he uses.
I mean, and before you bring in Grant, with Yuri, his first ever start was against Cincinnati, so it's a team he's seeing again. So I believe this is the only team that he's seen that's going to see him twice, or that has seen him twice already. Now Cincinnati, so there'll be it. So let's see how Yuri does against a team that sees him twice, that sees him again compared to the first one, and see how well they can maybe differently go about Yuri. But with that, let's bring in the guy who's going to see Yuri tonight and every other game for this series, the one, the only, Mr. Grant Kiefer. Yeah, let's go.
Let's go. Press box report, Fish on First Live. I appreciate you guys for having me in here. Can you guys hear me, though? It is very loud here. Wi-Fi's bad, all right? We're good. Well, you guys hit home the main storyline for this one tonight, at least. Yuri Perez makes his return. Daniel is right. This is the only repeat team he's seen so far this year. The Cincinnati Reds made his MLB debut against them, but it's a very, very different team than the team that Yuri saw. There was no Matt McClain on that team. There was no Ellie De La Cruz on that team. No Christian Encarnacion Strand. Not even Joey Votto, who's been the one constant for the Reds through all these years. So Yuri Perez has only pitched 5 2/3 innings over the last month. We'll have his work cut out for him tonight in a hitter's ballpark, but what Sandy Alcantara told me pregame was he's going to show who he was in the first half. So a lot of confidence from maybe Yuri's closest friend on this team, but we'll be intrigued to see what he does tonight, guys.
Yeah, well, tell us a little bit what else you're seeing from the Marlins side. How do you see them going into there against the Reds? Maybe the lineup, Jake Berger, everyone like that. Just how are you seeing the Marlins coming into this Red series?
Well, tonight's lineup is a little interesting for sure. Luis Arraez gets a scheduled day off. Jazz Chisholm sitting for the 3rd day in a row, coincidentally against another left-handed batter. But he got some work in today on the field, did some running. Hamstring's still a little bit tight, but he looks physically pretty good. And I wouldn't be surprised to see him this series at least. And what he told me today was he has to be on the field in order to keep it going and to help the team get to the playoffs.
I guess the injury report, if you want to go through that quickly, Grant.
Only 2 injury updates today. Jazz Chisholm, MRI, and it came back negative, luckily for him. And then Tommy Nance will begin a rehab assignment in Pensacola. But other than that, all the same.
Yeah, there's no fun in the injury report anymore because most of the team is healthy. This is the healthiest they've probably been at any point this year.
Yeah. Grant, talk to us what you have planned for the rest of this games, because you're not just here for this game, you're here for the whole series. What do you have planned that the viewers can expect during these upcoming games?
From us, from our content here?
From you.
From me, all right, yeah. I mean, Fish on First is becoming a multimedia platform. We're not just written recaps and written stories anymore. We're going to do a lot of different stuff. Stay tuned to our TikTok page, which is ever growing, our YouTube page, what you guys are watching on right now, I'm sure. And then we'll do some feature stories as well. A lot to do in 3 days, but I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, and with the Reds, we have to mention them. Again, have been on a losing streak, kind of with the Marlins, almost in the same position there. We were just talking about them going off in the wild card race. How do you see this team? Again, probably one of the youngest, if not the youngest team in baseball. Joey Votto brings that average up a little bit, but how are you seeing everyone else there with LA, Matt McClain, Spencer Steer, Encarnacion Strand, just having that? And how do you think maybe they're looking, because you are in Cincinnati from there? Just how do you see the Reds going?
Yeah. I mean, I've watched a lot of Reds baseball this year, so this is definitely one of their lower points. The Reds are one of the few teams that have been just as bad as the Marlins since the All-Star break. And the Reds are one of only 4 teams at this point in the month of August that don't have a win yet. So they definitely want to turn it around as well. And the Marlins were almost that 5th team if it wasn't for the heroics in that 11-inning marathon last week. So it's definitely a series that both teams need to take. And I talked to the guys I talked to today in the clubhouse. A lot of them said that the sentiment is kind of the same amongst everyone there. This is a really important series. They're playing against a team that's right there in the thick of this wild card race as well. A team they didn't perform so well against when they met the first time in May. And this is a different Reds team from then. So it'll be interesting to see how a team with a lot of young Reds hitters approaches what the Marlins, are rolling out this week with Yuri Braxton, who's a left-hander. The Reds have hit lefties pretty well throughout different points of this year. And Johnny Cueto, of course, makes his return to this ballpark on Wednesday. We'll talk to him tomorrow and get some thoughts from him on that.
Yeah, well, I want to hear more from you on Cueto to finish us off here, because seeing him in person, this is also his first road start as a Marlin this year. He's probably been a little bit better than people thought since rejoining the team after his injury a few weeks ago. But now this is kind of a new test for him. He's pitching the final game of that. And I know that you are familiar with his history pitching in this ballpark. You think he's going to be all right, even though it tends to favor hitters and be a very homer-friendly environment?
Yeah, I believe his last time he pitched here was in 2021 when he was still with the Giants. I believe he went 6 or 7 innings with only 1 earned run. I'd have to look at the stat again, but his career ERA at the ballpark in Great American is floating around 3. But what I'm worried about for that Wednesday matchup is right now the Reds are throwing out Graham Ashcraft out there, who since June 30th, he kind of had a rough stretch through May, went to the IL, came back pretty strong. That was his first start back against the San Diego Padres. Since then, 2.03 ERA. He's been one of the best pitchers in all of baseball. So Graham Ashcraft will definitely have his stuff for the Marlins coming Wednesday afternoon.
Yeah, and before we let you go, anything you heard from Skip, him talking about anything interesting to note from Skip's conference prior to the game?
It's mostly same old stuff that you would expect, but like what Craig Mitch expected last night on the show I hosted, State of the Fish. Yuri's probably going to go around 80 pitches, and they're going to definitely be cautious with him and just make sure that he doesn't jeopardize the rest of this season as the Marlins come down this postseason run here.
Yeah, all right. So, Grant, maybe the last thing I want to ask you: how is the clubhouse with Yuri back? How is everyone feeling? How are the vibes? How is Yuri being welcomed back by all the guys?
It was the warmest welcome I think you could have imagined. He met the team today. He flew in by himself in the CVG Cincinnati airport last night. And it was the first time all these guys had seen him. And the trade deadline is definitely a weird thing. Watching Josh Bell and Jake Berger introduce themselves to the area, who are teammates now, it was kind of funny to watch. But Yuri definitely got a warm welcome back. These guys are ready for him. And it's crazy to think that someone who's 20 years old could be the life of a team right now. And if the Marlins do make the postseason, I feel like we're going to probably have to attribute it to what Yuri Perez brought in this last 2 months here.
All right. So, Grant, go enjoy it. All 3 games. We're going to have so much coverage from Grant, stories, articles, TikToks, interviews, whatever you want. Grant has got you covered. And did you send a prediction video?
It's in there.
Oh,
yeah. One take. I'm surprised I did it. One take, Grant.
All right. I think Sean's going to leave you with this before we go. Something with Skyline. How's it just the Skyline?
Skyline chili takes. All right. My take, being a Cincinnati on Skyline chili, is it gets a lot of hate. Cheese conies are good, but I get if you don't like the 3 ways, 4 ways, or 5 ways. Man, noodles and chili is a little weird, but you got to get a cheese coney. I think I might go get one after this.
All right, Grant. Go enjoy it. Always welcome back on. All right. What a guy. What a press box report.
Yeah, I am looking up. I don't know if I'll be able to find it. Somebody asked in the comments, I think LMF did, about whether Yuri has faced Ellie De La Cruz when they were both in the minors. It was not this year because Ellie was at AAA this year, while Yuri has only been pitching at AA when he's been sent down. I'm looking at the year before at 2022, just scrolling here, but I don't think so. I think this would be their first career meeting between these guys.
It's going to be a fun matchup.
Yeah.
I think a question to ask maybe more to Kevin with Yuri, maybe when he does, him getting optioned and him spending most of his time in Double-A. Do you believe that's why, especially him getting optioned maybe the first time in the middle of the season, you might expect him go to Triple-A, spend time right there in the league right before the majors. Why is that Yuri, when he is optioned or even before that, most of his playing time is in Double-A and maybe not Triple-A?
That's actually a great question, Daniel. I actually don't know exactly how to say. I think it's more just familiarity with the coaching staff, the players, his catcher Will Banfield down there. I guess that's the best answer I could give you. I thought he was going to go to AAA. I thought we all were going to go to. I think everyone here thought he was going to be a AAA guy when they sent him back down. And then not only is it better in terms of quicker to get down to Miami, easier to move around for him if he has to. I guess different rules there in AAA. I believe you have the ABS over there. I mean,
right.
more major league talent, I guess. Fringe major leaguers you could face over there, but Double-A is fine. They don't have the tact baseball anymore, so that's fine by me. And yeah.
All right. So before we get to this break, anything you guys want to mention real quickly before we head to the break and go out and talk about these lineups and maybe what to expect from this Reds Marlins game?
Well, I mean, the big question hanging over everybody's head is exactly how much longer, how is he really here to stay the rest of the season? How exactly is this going to work? They brought him back earlier than they planned to, than they ever thought they would. And as things line up, if he starts every fifth game the rest of the way, Perez is going to make 10 more starts the rest of the season. But he's already thrown more innings than he's ever thrown in a season before. He's at 90 between the majors and the minors. And I think the expectation is that there's some sort of innings range that they don't want him to go past. And it's all guesswork. It just seems like if he did stay in the rotation the rest of the way in a 5-man rotation, that he would eventually they would run out of bullets and that they would pull the plug before the end of the year. And now that this team is still very much in the thick of the playoff race, that is a huge question hanging over this thing. And we don't have the answer right now. So I would just encourage people to savor every start that we get, because my educated guess is that it's not going to be as simple as starting every game, every fifth day, this like the rest of the way. I think there's going to be a limited number of times that we see him, and hopefully he is about as good, within the range of being as good as he was before he got sent down. And if he is, then that's going to be a big treat to watch.
Yeah, that's the thing with Yuri, because you do want this guy pitching in the playoffs for you. So I believe if you keep him going at the pace he is, as you mentioned, he would reach the innings limit, right, before the playoffs. 110 in this case.
Well, if it's 110, he is 20 away from 110. It's not 110. Whatever it is, he's going to go past 110 because he's at 90. He's at 90.
Shit! No.
Yeah, that is 110 is less than 3 weeks away. If he,
oh my God.
So I don't know what that number is. I think it's somewhere between 110 and 140, because if he makes 5 innings to start, 10 starts, that's 140. I think it's somewhere in between there. Just savor what we have, because this team, they're flying kind of by, they're making it up as they go along, honestly, in terms of exactly what his schedule is. And we have been critical of that. It does seem the fact that they continue to waver exactly what the plan is. It's not a good look, but he has performed really well. And even in these rehab games, his stuff is what it should be. So the most important thing is that he is healthy throughout this process. And if they are able to figure out a way to keep him healthy, that's the most important thing for the future of this organization.
See, the hard part is, I was going to say, is that it's just you want him right now, and you need the innings from him right now. But also, if you make the playoffs, you're going to need the innings in the playoffs. So you got to pick almost one or the other, but you really can't. That's a weird spot right now what they're in.
Yeah. Well, the way that the standings have shaped up, you have to focus on the here and now. The playoffs are not a guarantee, and I don't even think they're a strong likelihood at this moment. If you make it in, that's a big accomplishment, and you need to put faith in all the other veterans on this team to, if it comes to that situation, for them to take care of business. So we've reached a point where it was a different conversation a month ago when the team was 15 games over 500 almost. But now that it's so much in doubt that you're going to make it, you just need to focus on getting there in the first place.
All right. Yeah. So with that, we're going to go ahead and go to our break. And after the break, we will have more on the Red Marlins series. lineups and Ryan Weathers, starting pitcher. We'll be right back after this. All right, we are back with FOF Live presented by La Pop. Again, you can check them on Instagram, Twitter, and at their Doral location. So go do that before you finish rest of the stream. I want to bring up this point from LMF. Really interesting. He's bringing up Dontrell Willis, who was coming out of the bullpen in 0-3 to limit his innings. If that's something you could see the Marlins doing with Yuri going into, if they do make the playoffs and maybe NLDS, whatever, is that something that the Marlins can do with Yuri to limit his innings and just come out there at the bullpen?
They shouldn't, in my opinion, to be honest with you. I mean, besides Sandy and maybe, well, you could go Brax, Sandy, Luzardo, or some type of order in the playoffs. No, it's not a worst idea, but I'd rather have Yuri starting a game over Braxton in the playoffs, if I'm being totally honest with you, if we're talking playoffs. But, it's not the worst idea to limit the innings. I think we've mentioned this many times before, even when they sent him down, that it wouldn't have hurt to put him in the bullpen to limit those innings and at least have him out there. You'd probably be your best reliever if you put him in there. But not a bad option. Just I'd rather have him start a game than come out at the bullpen, especially at this point in the season.
Yeah.
Well, the context there is kind of important, where D-Train wasn't as effective the second half of the season as he was the first half. Like, he had a 4.5 ERA from the second half of the season that year, where he wasn't. The reason why he was coming out of the bullpen is because they had 3 better starters by the time the playoffs came around, or they thought they did at that point, given that the trajectory of his season. So it depends on the performance. And if he is still, we'll see. Not perfect parallel, but I see where he's going with that, with D-Train being a rookie, being very important to that team. So we'll see.
It's a different situation too. I mean, I think you much rather have Yuri than Cueto pitching in a playoff game. Let's be honest. I think that's also true. Was that the case with Shane Baz? I guess that's a little more recent. See, did he start games and then came out of the bullpen in the playoffs for the Rays? Or has he not had any playoff experience? I might be wrong with that, but I'm pretty sure he was a reliever in the playoffs at some point for them.
Let me see.
He made one postseason appearance for them. That was 2 years ago, but he barely. That was slightly different. He didn't really do much during the regular season at all. At that point,
okay,
they brought him up even without. They put him on the playoff roster even without a big body of work that even is close to what Yuri has put up to this point. Yeah, so not a perfect comp.
It's not really an actual example to go off of it. With recency bias, there's no real example to see what the future could look like for Yuri.
The one guy that I go back to several points is Julio Urias, who was also super duper young when he came up in 2016. That was on the Dodgers team that won their division. They made the playoffs, and in the playoffs, he only threw 5 2/3 innings in 2 separate outings. He had 1 start, and that didn't go so well. He had 1 multi-inning relief appearance. That was all right in that outing. That's really the closest comp, and even that one is not totally perfect. That was one where he made a lot of short starts for the Dodgers during that year, and he was still around during the playoffs, and he was still part of the team back there. But that's the thing; it is hard to find much recent precedent, at least when you're looking at the last decade and a half of pitching usage, where things have changed, where we baby. I wouldn't say, you could say baby, that they protect young pitchers more so than ever before in terms of workload. That's what makes this so unusual. That's why, despite me disagreeing with some of the things the Marlins have done with him, it's hard to feel that strongly against it, because there haven't been many other pitchers that are 20 years old that are like so effective as major league starting pitchers, but yet they're just not conditioned to be pitching important innings this deep into the year. There's just not a whole lot of other comparisons to make here. Not much of a roadmap for the Marlins to follow. They got to just use their best judgment.
Yep.
I agree.
Well, they shut down. No, never mind.
Yeah.
Strasburg was a different situation. Yeah, never mind.
Well, I want to go a little bit and talk about the deadline guys, the guys the Marlins traded for. Maybe not all the guys in the deadline. Again, we can include Jorge Lopez, David Robertson. I want to go ahead and ask you guys, maybe not a grade, just because it's still so far, but how have you seen these guys play so far since being traded? I'm not saying win or lose, but how have you what's the quick review you would give these guys, maybe in general, and how so far they've played for the Marlins since being traded?
I think right off the bat, Josh Bell has easily been a pretty solid trade, just having quality at bats, just overall being a good hitter. I think he's been such a solid guy in that 3 for now. I mean, obviously that could get better, that could get worse, but I think he's been just a solid bat right in the middle. And Jake Berger at least gives the threat of, he just hit his first home run. He gives that threat of more power in the lineup. So it really balances out the Marlins lineup. And obviously David Robertson, if we want to talk about him, hasn't been great so far, but hopefully within time that can change a little bit. But yeah, I think pulling up the picture of Josh Bell, he's been really good. I know before that last game, I was looking at his pitches per at bat. He was seeing at least, I think, like 4.2 pitches per at bat, somewhere in that range, something like that. So we've seen a decent amount of pitches in these first couple of games and really giving quality at bats in that 3 hole with especially Arise, Soler, and then him, which are 3 guys back to back to back that can put up pretty solid quality at bats, and presumably arises on half the time, and then Soler is a big power guy, so it brings 2 power guys back to back and it really balances that lineup to me.
With Berger, I do want to mention, I know Eli made this point on the spaces yesterday, that even before the deadline, Berger had been walking a lot more as of late, and that's been the case with Miami. He has a total of only 3 strikeouts, 2 walks, 333 OBP since joining the team. So it's better than whatever he had, throughout the whole season, where it's like a 2-something. So that's been something that's really impressed me a lot. I mean, you could go back to the 12-inning game where he got hit by pitch. He walked a couple times. I mean, he looked pretty good in that game. You could also talk about the power, where he changed the game for Miami. And, Miami needed someone with big power that would, with one swing, kind of change the tone of the game, and he did that in that Texas game where he had the homer. They were all of a sudden just down by 1. Obviously, Brian De La Cruz, I believe, was the next batter. Couldn't get it done, but that's what I've liked about him. Bell not only has been a great player, he's been a great person, super good with the media, very good clubhouse presence. Obviously, he has the years of experience, and the defense has been great too. He's usually a pretty just below league average when you look at DRS, but for the most part, he's been pretty good. So, loving what Miami, not only acquired at the deadline, but just getting those years of control as well, because obviously Berger and Bell are probably back next year. At least Bell's probably back next year. But then you mentioned Robertson. I think it's just the time. The good thing he hasn't pitched in a while. Good mental reset there. Probably we'll see him at some point this series. Jorge Lopez, besides the Texas game, he's looked pretty good. So no complaint, not too much to complain there. Just
right.
Bad control.
Yeah, I think it's only been 3 outings for Lopez, and so 1 out of 3 goes pretty badly. Yeah, he's still very much a project. 4 appearances in total. Okay, so 4 appearances in total. I mean, that one badly, and it was against pretty much one of the toughest offenses that he's going to face all year. Yeah. With him, it's still a big question as to the way that they're using him. Kind of shows that they don't trust him to suddenly flip a switch after the trade and be back to who he was early on last year. He's still somewhat of a project, and but yet they have him on the major league team, and so hopefully something clicks. But that was the most curious trade when they just swapped Floro for Lopez. Floro has been a little bit better in his small sample with the Twins to this point. Something I wrote an article on, a consequence of the Bell trade and his contract. It signals to me that Jorge Soler's chances of coming back next year are extremely low. So with Bell, they both have the ability to test free agency this offseason. Soler is far more likely to do it, of course, because he's had the better year, and also because he's guaranteed less money if he sticks around. With some incentives based on playing this year, it's going to be like a $13 million option for Soler next year. We expect him to decline that. But the fact that they traded for Bell, somebody who, even if he has his moments at first base, there's going to be a lot of DH time for him moving forward as well. I imagine that however they put together the roster next year, there's going to be somebody else that plays a considerable amount of first base. Maybe it's Luis Ariz on certain days, or maybe it is somebody else that does it. Either way, I don't think the DH spot is going to be quite as wide open next year as it was this year with Soler. Also because Jake Berger the same way. There's going to be some days where Berger, I think moving forward, ideally you give him a half day off and spare his defense from impacting the game one way or another. I just want people to accept that no matter how the rest of this year goes, and Soler has been so important to the team getting to this point, especially in terms of clutch situations. It's really sinking in that he is likely going to be playing somewhere else. There's only so much money that a team should be investing in a DH spot. And if you already have Bell on the books for $16.5 million with Soler, the reality that he's probably going to cost about the same next year, whether it's via a qualifying offer or whether it's a multi-year deal to bring him back, it's a lot of money to invest in guys that are kind of limited in terms of base running and defense for a team that also has other needs like shortstop, like catcher, potentially center field. So that's one of the consequences of this, where it is a forward-looking move. The moves they made do have a lot of implications for 2024 and beyond. However they put together this team, there are going to be significant differences next year as compared to the rest of this year.
Yeah. Well, would you guys say between these five guys, maybe one guy who's maybe I don't want to say surprised, maybe surprised you the most in how well they're playing, and maybe a guy who's disappointed just a bit? I know it's still very early to just say who's been surprising, who's disappointing, but are there any guys that you can relate to any one of those?
I would say David Robertson, obviously, right away has been disappointing, but without question. But obviously, I think, it's got a couple of days off. I think he can rally himself back and be a really good pitcher that he's been, which obviously the couple blown games you don't expect from him. So hopefully he can get back in and he'll be all right.
All right. So let's go ahead and talk about this Reds series now. We have a couple minutes, 10, 15 minutes left before we get into prediction time, and talk about this Red series. All important to both teams because both teams are fighting for a wild card spot. Both teams on losing streaks, losing series, and both teams that need a win desperately. I'm looking at the Reds, of course, leading off. Looks like maybe the new face of the franchise and Ellie De La Cruz, and how hot he's been since his debut. It's this entire team is just young players, guys who they're hoping for in the future. And then, you have Joey Votto. Since coming back, maybe not hitting for average, but has been slugging the baseball, has I believe a 830 OPS, has been hitting home runs when he does hit the ball. But this is a team that's very dangerous top to bottom. Kevin, talk to me a little bit about some of these Reds. Maybe we could start with Ellie De La Cruz, who's kind of been changing baseball since him coming up. I mean, he already hit a cycle in his young career.
The StatCast King is what his nickname should be. But I do want to ask, most of these guys don't have any. Most of these guys aren't even qualified hitters, right? Votto, Encarnacion, Strand.
Yeah. So with Ellie De La Cruz, for example, his hard hit rate 48%. That'd be the highest on the team. I think that would be pretty similar to Soler, for example. Yeah, Soler at 46. Jake Berger at 50. Ellie he'd be pretty deep in the red when it comes to a hard hit rate. Obviously, with sprint speed, he's at the very top of the scale. With him, people want to treat him well and crown him already, but it's a 34% strikeout rate. There's still limitations in his game in terms of being an overall hitter that he still needs to work out there. He's still a very aggressive player, and he still has a lot to prove. He's been good. He's but maybe even a clear, not even he is the face of their franchise for sure moving forward based on his potential. But I don't know if he's even their best player at this particular moment. I think we may have to lean towards Matt McLain, who's actually not in the lineup tonight due to their congestion of infielders. Matt McLain is the one that's hitting 300 with decent power, good speed, and defense at several infield positions as well. We'll presumably see him in this series quite a bit. Yeah, it's been a lot of other guys that are having solid years in here, but they've not been playing well recently. They have been struggling a lot, especially Ellie De La Cruz. You know, he put up a lot of his great numbers when he was called up. Off the top of my head, I think he was called up in June at some point, but he has not been playing nearly as well since the All-Star break. With Christian Encarnacion Strand, he's been all right, but same lack of plate discipline that is limiting him quite a bit. And with Votto, it's a lot of power, but not much else. Tyler Stevenson's been kind of underwhelming. I thought he could emerge as one of the better catchers in baseball this year, and instead he's taken a pretty big step back. So, this team has not really been putting up runs recently the way that they were during the middle of the year when they briefly surged to first place in their division. And in fact, they're probably in a situation where they probably have to look in the mirror and think that it's wild card or nothing with them. The main thing holding them back is their pitching staff. They had a couple games, especially against the Cubs recently. It really ironed home how much in danger they are. They just, even in this series, tonight it is this rookie, Brandon Williamson. I've not really seen him pitch much at all to this point, to be honest with you. It's him. Then tomorrow it is one of the worst starting pitchers in all of baseball, Luke Weaver. Luke Weaver, I have no idea why he is in a major league rotation right now. It just shows you how thin they are on healthy arms, because this is a team that's missing Hunter Green. They're missing Nick Lodolo. Yeah, Luke Weaver is a 6.98 ERA in 19 starts. He's been in the rotation for the vast majority of the year, despite having a 7 ERA. And that guy is going to pitch in this series in a very important game. Graham Ashcraft, in the final game of the series, he is the best of the bunch. He's fine. It's got good stuff. In fact, I'll just flash up quickly the probable starters so that everybody's on the same page here about how this lines up. Yeah, the Marlins have the advantage very clearly in these first two games. And Cueto versus Ashcraft might be a toss-up. Ashcraft's been a lot better lately, but overall his performance is just really inconsistent. He doesn't miss bats the way that you'd think he would, given his velocity. Yeah, this is the big weakness of this team for the Reds, and their bullpen honestly has been a little bit up and down as well. Like this is a team that when everything was going well for them, it was very strongly led by their lineup. And now that their lineup has in some areas regressed, they are a bad team. They've been slumping quite a bit, and they're looking a lot more like the team that they were early on this year.
This is going to be a very interesting pitching matchups here. Just given the fact that Miami's going with that guy, I guess the bottom part of their rotation in this case with, well, Brax is probably the best pitcher they're going to face besides Yuri. So Miami should have the advantage on almost every single pitching matchup here tonight. So, well, besides maybe the Ashcraft Cueto one, I would give that one to Ashcraft. He's been pretty damn good as of late. But hey, Cueto's back in Cincinnati. He's going to pitch a game there, former home. So maybe it goes well for him. That was believed like kind of his prime part at some point, prime Cueto at some point, or early Cueto.
Yeah. And really quickly here with the Reds, two players we've not mentioned yet. Matt McClain not in the lineup, and then Jonathan India, who's looking to be activated on Tuesday, per reports, who could be activated there. Player that could definitely, I don't want to say damage, but could hurt the Marlins in some way. And a guy that maybe could have been a Marlin come the trade deadline and before that. I don't know if you guys want to talk a little bit about Jonathan India, maybe how well he's been playing this season compared to maybe last year, where he was going through a sophomore slump and really not playing to as the player that we knew won Rookie of the Year. Kev, how have you seen maybe Jonathan India this season? Because he's having a really great year when you compare it to the year before, where it seemed like maybe injuries got him and he wasn't really hitting the ball well, and maybe some of his defense was questioned, but maybe this year he's really maybe turned it around to being a positive player.
Yeah, he's been great against the righties. I think that's what you have to look at. 263, 345, 769 OPS. I mean, when he faces lefties, he's pretty freaking bad, to be honest with you. 216 with a 667 OPS. So I guess that's one thing you want to mention. He got off to a great start, and for the most part, he's kind of cooled down. On June, July, got a league average in the pre-All-Star break. He's been better post-All-Star break, but obviously the injury. He's been good. He's hitting the ball pretty well. He doesn't strike out too much. Good stuff from Jonathan India. The question is, will they keep him in the offseason? Because there's so many infielders on this team that you got to trade at least one, and you could probably get some pitching back. And I'm surprised Cincinnati didn't do that throughout the trade deadline. At least try to trade one of them, given how bad their rotation is right now. I mean, as Eli said, you have Luke Weaver starting tomorrow. That just tells you how much pitching they really need. He's been having a good year. I know he hit a homer off in the slot in the last year when Miami came over to Cincinnati. That was like one of those blowout games where he hit an absolute bomb. It was either a grand slam or like a 3-run shot. But yeah,
Jacob Stallings pitching.
I don't know who was pitching actually.
Yeah,
he's good.
Nick, talk to us. Let's go and look at the Marlins lineup for a bit. We mentioned no Jazz, no Luis Arraez. You have John Birdie leading off there and continuing with Joey Wendell. I don't want to say experiment, but him playing almost every day and again going to the 9th hole just because he's been on such a slump as of late. Tell us a little bit what you see from this lineup. No Arraez, in this no Jazz, who's dealing with injury, but how does this lineup fare? Do you think this is a winning lineup against the Reds?
I think against the Reds tonight and their pitching, I think it can definitely easily be a winning lineup, especially because John Birdie's been pretty good this year just as a whole. So leading off, I see that as a fine thing. I think he'll get on base once or twice today. And you look at the 2 through 4, 2 new guys in there, Soler and then DLC is in there. So I think you should be pretty confident in Avi batting in the 6th hole. I think it's a pretty relatively good lineup going out there today. And I think with the pitching matchup, they'll have a good shot. Yuli playing today should be good. And Fortes, we just hit that home run in the Rangers series, so maybe he can kind of bounce back, get in here. But I think the main thing is for the Marlins just really in this Red series with the lineup is if they score early and get the Reds down, I think the Reds will kind of fall over. But if the Reds get to scoring early and they start having fun, I think it's going to be hard to actually beat them. So I think it's about scoring early, getting on base early, scoring a bunch of runs, which hopefully that can happen. Put another 5 like they did on Saturday night. But that would be the plan. I think it's a strong lineup going out there today.
Kev, Josh Bell DH, Yuli first base. Do you like that, or do you wish maybe Josh Bell would be in first base so Jorge Soler can have that DH role?
Yeah, it's fine. I guess it's fine how it is right now. Skip wants to play Yuli more. He mentioned Yuli would continue to play as much as he could put him in the game, and obviously he's going by that. I believe this is the second day in a row that they're putting Bell at the DH and Yuli at first base, if I'm correct. I know they did it in the Texas series at least once or twice. Soler in right field, it's fine. He personally does not want to play there. I think everyone knows that. He would rather be a DH every day if it were his choice. But it's fine. Obviously, that DH role is kind of open right now for really basically Bell, Soler, and Berger. If you ever want to put Avi in there one day, if you want to get him some at-bats. But aside from that, next year, Eli mentioned it's basically going to be maybe Berger, Bell, and we'll see from there. But it's fine. Yuli's been pretty good for the most part. Obviously, he's been doing his job. I know Eli wasn't a big fan of Yuli, but I guess he's kind of proven him wrong in a way to a certain degree.
Defense, it's August. It's August. I got to evolve with what is played out for the vast majority of the season. He's been fine. Yeah, Yuli has been fine in this situation where he starts against lefties and occasionally in other situations, and he's been really good off the bench when they need him as well. And in high leverage situations as a pinch hitter, yeah, he's fine. He's not a problem. I think the one thing you point to is they're facing another lefty. They faced 3 in the last 4 games, and that means that they're sitting Jesus Sanchez in favor of Avi Garcia, and I don't agree with that. I mean, things have softened on Avi when he was out due to the injury, and they played well during his rehab assignment. In his very first game back, he hit pretty well, and I think people have their pitchforks have come down briefly because of that. But he's still, in my opinion, the worst position player on this roster right now. And I don't think they're going to play him, I guess, against every single lefty the way that things have lined up. But I don't think that's an automatic thing that everybody should be on board with. I don't think he's a good baseball player at this stage in his career, and Sanchez is. And they should, in a small sample, Sanchez has been hitting lefties this year in a very small sample. So if these games are so crucial to the team, I don't think we should just brush off the idea that Sanchez should be sitting just because it's a lefty. I think if they were really eager to win these games, that Sanchez would be in here against, again, Brandon Williamson. He's not like your typical esteemed veteran lefty. He is Brandon Williamson. So I would like to see that adjustment, that Sanchez plays more than Avi does. Moving forward, of most days you're going to face righties instead of lefties. So I do expect that Sanchez is going to get more of the playing time moving forward. This is just one little item, though, that is discouraging. So as long as Sanchez starts the other 2 games in this series, they have a good chance to win it, as long as they're actually putting their best players on the field most of the time.
Worth mentioning, Joey Wendell's now hitting 9th. They moved Fortes up a spot. I guess it shows, how bad Wendell has been as of late. I believe he's still without a hit. 0 for what at this point? 0 for 30 what?
He got 1 hit. He did get a hit.
Oh, recently. He did? Okay.
Yes, I believe he got a hit on Saturday to break up the 0 for 28.
Okay.
Wow.
Well, good for him. Hopefully he gets it going.
All right. Anything else you guys want to mention? Pitching matchups? Oh, actually, I wanted to bring up relievers. And specifically, I wanted to bring up AJ.
No?
I know, no Noah here. I know he's gonna hate us for us talking about relievers without him. I wanted you guys to talk about the closer situation and AJ Puck. How have you seen this closer situation happening? AJ Puck coming in and he's really been on the decline. David Robertson comes in the closer role and again gives up some homers, some blown saves. How have you seen this closing situation happen now with the Marlins? Is this just a rotating staff of, all right, whoever has the best matchup or the best opportunity, you could be the closer for that day, for that game, or are we just maybe not going to have a set closer for the rest of the year? That's just a closer by committee.
It's going to be Robertson. They traded him for it. And that's basic. There's just no other explanation. As good as Scott has been this season, and as much as I would like to see maybe close a couple of games out just to try it out, it's going to be Robertson. They traded for him. They made that move specifically to bring in a closer who could pitch in high leverage situations and, kind of move Puck away from that role. It's going to be Robertson. I don't think there's much of a discussion. Unless he continues to blow games like he didn't, it's going to be him.
Yeah,
I agree.
Yeah, I also agree.
And with Puck, how have you guys seen him playing as of late after he's gotten a little bit demoted from his closer situation? I remember him pitching the 6th inning a couple days ago. Yeah. How have you guys seen Puck, and maybe where would you put him in the game? Is this the guy that comes right after the pitcher? Is he a guy who comes before the closer as a setup man? What is AJ Puck's role moving forward?
I think that's what they're trying to find out. And that's why you've seen him in different situations. You saw him in the 6th. I think you've seen him in the 8th ever since the Robertson trade. They're just trying to find what's best for him. And, we'll eventually find out. He looked pretty good in the 6th. So we'll see. Maybe they stick him there. Obviously, I would like to see him more as a setup man, if I'm being honest with you, either him or Scott. Or you could go Puck 7th, Scott 8th, Robertson 9th. I would like to see that, but obviously they need to try it out, and we'll see.
Yeah, I think Puck still needs to have a couple of these productive outings in low leverage situations before you even have a conversation about using him. Like, to me, he is maybe a little bit ahead of Jorge Lopez in terms of being a wild card. At least with Puck, he throws strikes the vast majority of the time. But the issue is then so many of those strikes have been crushed. The fact that he's getting barreled up so much. The 2 worst things you can do as a reliever is, one, if you're just walking guys, then really the worst thing is when you're susceptible to long fly balls. Those are the ones that completely change a game. And for whatever reason, this past month, he has been extremely susceptible to those. Even though he looks healthy, he's just not locating his pitches the way he needs to be. So, yeah, that's a better conversation for, I think, the next stream. If he gets into a couple games in this series, if he does well both times, then maybe you start feeling that he's closer to the first half version of Puck.
Yeah. Kev, before we get into bridge time, I want to hear about your boy George Soriano and how well he's been doing, because he's killing it. I know he had to give up a couple runs in the 3rd in that start, but making him go a little late wasn't maybe the best ploy or the best thing to do with Soriano. But how have you seen him? Because he's been a pleasant surprise for the Marlins. It definitely has earned his way on the team to 2024. He's for sure earned his spot for that season. Definitely for the rest of this year.
Well, that's kind of why you've seen Brazoban go down more over him. I believe he only has 1 minor league option, so that also goes into account. But He's been great. I think you said it, Danny. They left him in a little longer. He's not really a starter anymore. He started in this organization as a starting pitcher, transitioned into a reliever, I want to say last season. And he's been great. He's been really good. The slider's amazing. Not really much to say. He's just been eating innings for Miami. I would like to see him in more high leverage situations, to be honest with you. I kind of hate that they keep using him as that long man mop up guy, but obviously he's provided value. And Skip has been very adamant about that, about the value that Soriano's provided. But I would love to see him in high leverage at some point, medium leverage, best case. And I guess I guess we saw him in that case when he started on that Texas game, and he gave up 3 at the end, which sucks. But for the most part, he was good and he's been great. I mean, you look at the Atlanta game, he carved up that lineup right after Yuri. He gave up like 6 earned. So yeah, he's been great. I'm very happy for him. He's one of the good guys in that clubhouse too. He's a great guy.
All right. So with that, Eli, it is prediction time. So let's get that video rolling.
This is prediction time.
It's time.
And again, with prediction time, as always, for prediction time, you can either go with the Marlins, you can go with the opposing team. It is a 3-game set, so 2-1, and your MVP could be a hitter or batter on either team. And your prediction does not have to match your MVP. They could be from different teams. As we are looking at some of our super subscribers here.
Yeah, it's split.
And it looks like it might be split almost right down the middle in terms of Cincinnati and the Marlins.
Right at the bottom, there's like a couple more Marlins, but
yeah. And I see a couple.
I see my prediction on there. So,
which one? Is it the Spencer Steer one, right, Kevin? Cincinnati.
Oh, no, never mind. There's no reliever on there.
Matt McClain.
Yeah, so, notice there's no Yuri on there. Nobody going with the Phenom returning from his minor league stint. Something to think about, considering obviously how well he pitched the first time up. But nobody picked him.
See that leaderboard, Eli. I don't know. I heard a rumor per source that there's a new leader there. The new number 1 ace there. Oh, let's see who that is. Oh, yours truly, the winner, the 2022 prediction winner. Back at it, number 1 with Grant Taylor.
So mad about that.
Tied, and then again William Garcia, Williams, and Ryan rounding out. So
and there's Nick. Nick still is in the mix a little bit.
Let's go, Nick. Let's go.
LMF, how can you get at the bottom, man? How can you disappoint us like that? You can't be at the bottom here.
Yeah. So we have 2 prediction time videos to get to. One from the ballpark, and then one from a correspondent who's also on the road elsewhere. So let's get to those quick videos. First from Grant.
It is Fish on First prediction time. My prediction here live from Cincinnati. I think the Marlins will rebound against a struggling Cincinnati team. I've got Marlins 2 out of 3, and a guy who succeeded a lot here in Cincinnati in his career, former NL Central foe, Josh Bell. I've got him taking series MVP.
Damn it, crank
I was scared him saying Johnny Cueto. I was scared him.
I know for a second. I was like, "There's no way."
He filmed it portrait, so but it works. It works. So that's him on the field. Remember to follow Grant at Kiefer Media on Twitter for the next 3 days. He's going to be at all 3 of those games, and then hear from Isaac and Bella on their drive up to Orlando.
Bella's in this.
Greetings from the Turnpike with our predictions. I'll go first with the Marlins taking 2 out of 3. And I think El Cubano Gigante Jorge Soler will take advantage of that small ballpark in Cincinnati. Bella?
I think Marlins are going to sweep, and Josh Bell will win MVP as he will conquer the NL Central.
All righty. Thank you guys. Back to you, Eli.
Where's the script that Isaac gave Bella? Where's the script at? Where was the script?
Don't film and drive, guys.
Yes. So enjoy their trip. Let's get that music up and hop into this.
All right. Leading off, as always, Mr. Kevin Barral.
All right. I'm going to copy Bella. I think the Marlins will sweep. And I'm going to go with Josh Bell, who dominated the NL Central for so many years. I'll choose him as the MVP. I think 2 home runs for Bell.
Ooh. Eli.
I had the Marlins winning this series. 2 slumping teams. The Marlins, I think, have a little more life in them at this moment. 2 out of 3 in this one. Series MVP. Who did I pick? I have John Birdie. John Birdie is my series MVP.
All right. Let's go with myself here. I wanted to go Cincinnati at the beginning. but just hearing all the information, them being, losing 6 in a row, I'm going to go with the Marlins taking 2 out of 3. And why not? He is the man behind me. He is the man of the day. Let's go Yuri Perez. It's very rare for a pitcher to win it, but let's see if Yuri can get it done. He's my MVP. And last, but certainly not least, Nick.
Well, I think this series is going to hugely benefit from a De La Cruz, and it's going to help the Marlins win 2 out of 3 with Brian De La Cruz winning the MVP.
All right, Nick, you can take off your mask. This is actually Noah making the prediction. But thank you guys for watching. It should be a fun series there between the Marlins and the Reds. Again, follow Grant at Kiefer Media. He's going to have so much stuff, so much content, stories, TikToks, interviews, everything. So make sure to follow him there. For myself, Daniel, for Kevin, for Eli, for Nick, for Grant, for Isaac and Bella at the Turnpike. Who knows where they're at? This is FOF Live presented by La Pop. Always go fish.